The story often begins with curiosity. Someone bright enough to read people in seconds meets a presence that refuses to fit into any familiar pattern. At first, the genius feels entertained. They enjoy decoding expressions, tracing emotional habits, mapping wounds the way others solve puzzles. They assume this will be another quick study, another predictable human map. But the deeper they observe, the more the picture bends. The expected reactions don't appear. The emotional cues don't match the standard scripts. What should have been simple becomes layered. What should have been predictable becomes vast. Curiosity slowly tilts into caution. Not every mystery is meant to be solved. Even the smartest ones learn that some souls carry a quiet intensity that rewrites the rules the moment you attempt to understand them. There's a particular moment when the genius pauses. The body language changes. The eyes soften, then sharpen. It's the instant they realize the person in front of them isn't confused or broken or harmless. Instead, there's a type of awareness sitting beneath the calm, the kind born from years of watching, learning, surviving. The genius recognizes the familiar traits of depth, but with a twist. This depth isn't merely emotional, it's strategic. It's the sort of intelligence that doesn't brag, doesn't announce, doesn't seek validation. It simply watches. And the more it watches, the more it understands. That moment rattles the observer because the roles shift. The genius isn't the one studying anymore. They're being studied. And that shift unveils truths they never prepared for. People often assume intelligence thrives on knowledge, yet the brightest minds know the danger of too much understanding. When the genius begins noticing patterns that mirror their own, discomfort creeps in. They catch glimpses of resilience wrapped in softness, discernment disguised as silence, wounds turned into wisdom. This combination is unsettling because it contradicts logic. Most people crumble under pressure. This one sharpened. Most people react to cruelty. This one recalibrated. The genius realizes that certain truths, once uncovered, cannot be unlearned. And some individuals carry truth sharp enough to cut whoever holds them without caution. Observation transforms into distance, not out of superiority, but out of respect for what shouldn't be disturbed. In toxic environments, the presence of someone self-aware becomes a mirror that exposes everyone else. The genius notices how the calm soul navigates conflict without collapsing into drama. They see how manipulation fails to land. Lies bend around this person as though hitting a shield built from past heartbreaks. The genius watches the room shift whenever this presence enters. The ones who play games grow tense. The ones who gossip grow silent. The ones who pretend to be powerful suddenly shrink. At first, the observer thinks this is coincidence, but patterns don't lie. Something about this person triggers honesty in some and fear in others. This is when the genius begins to understand why certain truths must remain untouched. Some personalities carry impact by simply existing. The more the genius studies the interactions, the more one thing becomes obvious. This person didn't become strong by accident. Every layer was built through trials that crushed the average soul. Every boundary was carved from experience. Every quiet response came from choosing peace over ego. The observer senses the weight behind the calm and realizes the danger in poking at unresolved depth. Some people survive storms so violent that their silence becomes thunder. When the genius sees this, they step back, not out of fear of the person, but fear of awakening something that should remain at rest. True strength doesn't come from force. It comes from surviving what force couldn't conquer. There's a part of the story the observer never admits out loud. A small part of them feels intimidated. Not because of threat, but because of recognition. It's unsettling to meet someone who can match your perception. For a genius accustomed to reading every soul like an open book, encountering someone whose pages are written in another language is humbling. They realize that understanding this person fully would require stepping into depths that terrify even the strongest intellects. Not all brilliance is rational. Some brilliance is emotional. Some is spiritual. Some is forged through pain. And some is simply beyond analysis. This realization makes the genius retreat, not in defeat, but in acknowledgement. At the center of the story lies a truth people rarely acknowledge. The most dangerous individuals are not the loud, the chaotic, the unpredictable. The most dangerous are the healed. The ones who learn to turn pain into clarity. The ones who don't react to provocation because they've outgrown the need for validation. the ones who walk away instead of exploding. Those minds cannot be manipulated, and that terrifies anyone who thrives on control. The genius sees this clearly. They realize they're dealing with someone whose strength doesn't need to be proven. Understanding the depth behind such strength becomes overwhelming. Some truths illuminate, others blind. As the observer steps back, the environment changes. The ones who underestimated this quiet force begin feeling exposed. All the gossip, manipulation, and cruelty look childish when placed beside someone who carries maturity like armor. The genius watches the shift with silent admiration. They understand that trying to decode this person would be like trying to analyze fire while standing inside it. Certain flames are meant to be respected from a distance. The lesson becomes clear: brilliance can recognize its counterpart, but not control it. And that's what separates wisdom from arrogance. The presence of such a soul becomes a silent teacher. Without speaking, they challenge others to grow. Without arguing, they reveal the truth in every lie around them. Without confrontation, they expose intentions. The genius sees this and finally understands why the universe hides certain people in plain sight. Too much understanding of them could disrupt entire dynamics. Their energy shifts rooms unintentionally. Their honesty rearranges relationships. Their intuition rewrites motives. Some truths aren't dangerous because they're wrong. They're dangerous because they're too right. And that level of clarity must be handled carefully.
Some individuals enter a story carrying an energy that breaks every category people try to place them in. The room feels different when they walk through it, not because they demand attention, but because their presence sharpens the air. In a toxic environment, their arrival exposes cracks no one wanted to acknowledge. They function as warnings without speaking, because their boundaries alone reveal where others lost theirs. They act as blessings without announcing it, because their kindness carries depth produced by survival, not convenience. They teach lessons effortlessly, because the way they navigate chaos reveals what maturity looks like under pressure. They reflect truths back at people who spent years avoiding their own reflection. You meet them and suddenly every pattern you ignored becomes visible, every lie you tolerated becomes heavy, and every excuse you repeated falls apart. That's why encountering such a soul feels like fate and disruption at the same time. In relationships built on manipulation, this kind of person becomes a catalyst. They don't play along with emotional games, which infuriates the ones who depend on confusion to stay relevant. When someone like this enters your life, you see the difference between being entertained and being understood. Their presence challenges the toxic patterns you normalized. Conversations become honest. Silence becomes revealing. The connection refuses to mimic the surface-level relationships you grew used to. This soul acts as a lesson, demonstrating what respect feels like and what it demands. They also function as a warning, showing how quickly peace can be destroyed when someone with pure intentions steps into a corrupted environment. The people who thrive on chaos feel threatened because the one thing they fear most is clarity, and clarity follows this soul everywhere. In friendships, the effect is just as intense. This person listens differently. They notice details others overlook. They remember things you didn't think mattered. Their empathy isn't decoration, it's insight. But insight carries responsibility, and responsibility reveals who is lying to themselves. Spending time with such a soul becomes a mirror. You begin seeing your strengths, your habits, your wounds. You see the parts of yourself you've ignored, because their presence activates self-awareness whether you want it or not. Some people call them intimidating, not because they're aggressive, but because they make excuses impossible. Their lessons don't come through lectures. They arrive through presence. The toxic friends retreat, the sincere ones grow. No one stays unchanged. Within family dynamics, this soul disrupts inherited patterns. Generational habits crumble in their presence. The guilt-driven control that once kept everyone obedient no longer works on someone who recognizes manipulation instinctively. Their refusal to participate in dysfunctional cycles triggers outrage from those who benefit from the cycle. Yet this soul acts as a blessing, breaking patterns that have existed for decades. Their strength becomes the proof that healing is possible. Their independence becomes the reminder that obedience is not the same as love. Their clarity becomes the warning that silence, will no longer protect those who refuse accountability. They teach without speaking and free others by simply living differently. That's a level of power that can't be manufactured. It's earned through survival. When this type of soul is placed inside a workplace filled with insecurity and politics, the effect becomes explosive. The office manipulator feels threatened. The gossip chain malfunctions. The boss who rules through fear loses footing. A quiet presence can destabilize an entire system built on performance and pretense. The person who operates through integrity becomes a mirror. No one asked for, but everyone sees. They expose incompetence without trying. They highlight dishonesty without accusing. They reveal who's real without effort. People begin avoiding them, not because they're disliked, but because truth feels uncomfortable when you've grown used to pretending. Yet for those hungry for authenticity, this soul becomes a blessing. They raise the standard simply by existing. Every toxic environment has a moment where someone finally sees the truth behind the chaos. Often, that moment arrives through someone whose energy doesn't match the dysfunction. Their calm feels foreign. Their silence feels intentional. Their choices feel deliberate. They don't chase validation, which confuses people who rely on approval to survive. They don't crumble under pressure, which frustrates those who weaponize stress. The contrast becomes a warning: this person cannot be manipulated the way others have been. Their presence teaches self-respect. Their boundaries teach discipline. Their understanding teaches emotional intelligence. To the unaware, they look complicated. To the wise, they look necessary. Some souls don't demand loyalty, they inspire it. They don't force trust, they earn it. They don't beg for connection, they attract it. And yet, their energy still intimidates those who carry hidden agendas. People with secrets feel exposed around them. People with masks feel heavy. People with unstable motives feel threatened. It's not because this soul confronts anyone. It's because authenticity forces dishonesty to reveal itself. In relationships, this often leads to distance. Not because the connection failed, but because the truth became too loud for the other side to ignore. They become a mirror reflecting back everything the other person avoided healing. You learn quickly that some blessings require bravery to keep. What makes this soul so multidimensional is their past. They've been through enough heartbreak, betrayal, and isolation to understand the inner architecture of pain. Their warnings come from experience. Their lessons come from survival. Their blessings come from empathy shaped through fire. Their mirror comes from self-awareness earned through rebuilding. They're complex, not because they try to be, but because life forced them to become layered. Being understood by someone like this feels rare, almost sacred. But being understood also means being seen, and being seen demands honesty. That's where most connections break. Truth isn't always welcomed, it's often feared. The story always circles back to one realization. Souls like this are placed into your life for a purpose. Sometimes the purpose is gentle growth. Sometimes it's loud awakening. Sometimes it's painful release. Sometimes it's the clarity required to walk away from everything holding you back. Their presence acts as a shift. You feel it before you understand it. The blessing becomes visible only after the warning is respected. The lesson becomes useful only after the mirror is accepted. And the mirror becomes life, changing only when the truth no longer scares you.